have now traced my design onto my pewter using the ballpoint pen. We have nicely flattened the pewter again so that we have a nice flat piece of pewter to start with. But before we can start, we need to look at our design a bit. So we need to think about the end result that we would like to have at the end of the day. And we need to plan a map for us to see where we're going to start and when are we going to do which details and how are we going to follow up on that one. So if I look at this design, it's clear that I need to start in the center. This center needs to be higher than the connecting butterfly wings. That's the reason why I need to start in the center. But on top of that, I need to think about the details that are in this central design. So I've got the butterfly's little eyes, and I've got these little designs on the back of the butterfly, which I would like to have on top of the main design. So looking at that, we will start with the eyes so that they are on top of the head together with this little design here, and then we will work our way down. And as we move down, we will look at the design in its pieces on its own. So for this one again, we need to look at how do we want to design this little design here in order for it to sit on top of each other, and then again these little designs here. So we are now going to start with the head of the butterfly. We're first going to do the little eyes, raise them up until we are happy, and then we're going to do the overall head shape. For that, I'm going to use the thin Teflon tip. I can do it with the 0.5mm ball tool, but I always like using this Teflon tip when it comes to these fine little details. I've got a bit of a sharper, crisp line with this tool than with the ballpoint or the metal ball tool. So we're going to start with this little detail here, and we're going to start working from the front of our pewter on our semi-soft surface. So before I continue, I'm going to place my pewter in a comfortable position, and then I'm going to add a bit of lubricant. It's important for me to add a little bit of lubricant so that my tools can glide easier. In the front of my pewter, on my lino, with my sharp Teflon tip, I'm going to do the two little eyes, and I'm going to press down with a medium to a hard pressure, and I'm going to do both of them in one go. And then I'm going to remove my lino. We're going to place our pewter on the hard surface, and we're still working on the front of our pewter. We then use our paper stump to flatten the area around while working towards the area that we want to raise. And remember that we're using our paper stump at a flat angle, not at a straight up angle. So at a flat angle, we start flattening a little bit away, and we flatten towards our design. And we turn our pewter as we go, pushing all of that extra height, all of that space into the little eyes. When it comes to a tiny piece like that, I then lift up my paper stump a bit, and then I flatten towards. Now we need to tidy up the surrounding edges using our Teflon tool. Again, my Teflon tool is at a flat angle, and I flatten towards my design. This will bring up that little design, and we can now decide if we need to add extra height from the back. I'm quite happy with the height, but I would like to have it just a little bit higher. So we're going to turn our pewter upside down, and we're going to place it on our felt, on our soft surface. So on our soft surface, from the back of our design, from the back of our pewter, I'm going to use my paper stump and I'm going to add a little bit of height from the back. Now these are soft pressures that I'm using because I don't want to press too hard so that I see a line from the front. So very softly, I'm going to add a little bit of height at a time because I can always add more height if I need to, but I cannot remove height. So back on the front of my pewter, on my hard surface, I now again need to flatten around. So using my paper stump at a flat angle, I flatten all around my design as we did in the first step. And then I'm going to do the little piece in the middle. And then we need to tidy up. So using the Teflon tool, we tidy up the edges on both sides. Removing any little bumps that stayed behind after flattening with the paper stump. Okay, so I am now quite happy with my height. So all I have to do now is I need to define my edges. Since this will be on top of the other layer, I need to define it now because I can't come back to it until after I filled it with beeswax. So I make sure that it's nice and tidy before I move on to the next layer. So now we're going to do the little detail on top of the head. So back onto our semi-soft surface, still working from the front of our pewter. Again, I'm going to use my Teflon tool, and with a medium to a heavy pressure, I'm going to draw in that design. We then remove our semi-soft surface, and we need to flatten from the front with our paper stump. Again, I'm flattening towards the design that I'm raising, and when it comes to the space, small tiny spaces, I get as close as possible, but I'm not going to force the paper stump into a tiny area. I'll rather take the Teflon tool, which has got a nice thin tip, and I can really get in between the eyes and that little design. And then we're going to define again. And I'm happy with the height that I got, so I'm not going to lift it up from the back. There we go. So now that the three little tiny details are done on the head of the butterfly, I can now lift up the entire design. So back onto the lino, or your semi-soft surface, on the front of your pewter, I'm now going to do the outline shape of the head. So I'm using again a medium to a soft pressure, and I'm doing the overall outline. There we go. Now I can flatten again on my hard surface, still working on the front of my pewter. I'm going to flatten towards my design. Now I'm going to add a little bit of height so that I can curve this design out a bit from the back of my pewter on my soft surface. So on the soft surface, working from the back of the pewter, I'm going to use my hands first, and then I'm going to smooth it out a little bit. I'm using a medium pressure, and I'm just using a circular motion to slightly push out that design. I don't want to lose the shapes of the eyes, so I'm using my hands first. can then take the paper stump and I'm going to redefine the eyes a little bit and that little shape at the top. I need to go back to the front of my pewter on my hard surface, and then we need to flatten again. Flattening towards my design, and now I can tidy up the edges with a Teflon tool. And then I can define with my ball tool. There we go. So I'm more than happy with the height that I achieved. And I have to remember that the more I'm going to work around this space, I'm still going to keep pushing height into this area here. So I don't want to raise it up too much at the moment, because then it's going to become too high. And these edges are going to become very thin. So I'm going to leave it at this height, and then it's going to raise up as we go along. So we can continue with the rest of the design. On the front of my pewter, on my lino, we're now going to do the next little design, which is the neck part of the butterfly. So that design has got 2 semicircles. So we're going to first do the inner semicircle, lift it up, and then do a second circle on the outside. On the front of my pewter, using my Teflon tool, with a medium to a hard pressure, I draw the outline, I remove my lino, and I flatten with my paper stump. After flattening with the paper stump, I can then tidy up with the Teflon tool. And I'm not going to lift it up anymore. It's more than enough for me, so I'm just going to tidy it up, and then I can do the second circle. Back on the front of my pewter, on my semi-soft surface, I can now do the second outline. And then I need to flatten again. So I remove the lino, take my paper stump, and we flatten around. And then we can immediately go on with the next design, which is exactly the same as this one. So we're first going to do the interior half circle. So on the front of my pewter, on my semi-soft surface, with my Teflon tool, using a medium to a hard pressure, I do the next design. We remove the lino, and then we flatten with our paper stump. I'm trying to get as close as possible to my design, but I don't want to push my paper stump over my design, so I stop just before the edge. I can then take the Teflon tool and then tidy up the edges. And then I can tidy up so that I can continue with the next design. And I always go a little bit to the other areas as well, so that I can keep the whole design tidy. So back onto the semi-soft surface, on the front of my pewter, again I'm going to use my Teflon tool, and we can do the next design. I'll remove the liner sheet and we can flatten again. Then tidy up with the Teflon tool. Again, I'm going a little bit past my design and I tidy up the edges. And then I can tidy up. And you want to do the tidying up with a soft pressure. You don't want to, because we're constantly tidying up around, and every time we do tidy up, these edges becomes thinner and thinner. So you don't want to press too hard. You just want to press hard enough just to do a nice crisp line. So we can now continue with the next part of the design. So let's have a look at that piece. So we've got this little triangular shape here, and then we've got another one a little bit bigger, and then we've got the bigger one. So I would like this one to be the highest, so we're going to do that one first. Then we need to do the lines first before we lift up the second one, and then we can do the third shape. So on the front of our pewter, on our semi-soft surface, we're first going to do the tiny little triangle. With a medium to a hard pressure, we draw the shape and then we need to flatten around. So we remove our liner and we flatten with a paper stump towards the design. Getting as close as possible, and then we take our Teflon tool and we tidy up the edges. And then we can tidy up. So I've got a nice height there, which is enough for me, so I can continue with the next one. So for the next one, there's these nice little lines on the inside. So we're first going to do them, and then we're going to lift up the shape. So for this, I'm going to use a medium to a soft pressure, and I'm just going to draw in the lines. So I don't really want to emboss it too much. I just want to leave the little shapes of the lines on the inside, so I'm not pressing too hard. So we've now done these lines, and now we're going to lift up the entire shape. So still on the front of my pewter, on my soft, semi-soft surface, now I'm going to use a medium to a hard pressure to lift up the entire shape. We remove our semi-soft surface and we can now flatten again towards our design. And then we can take our Teflon tool and we can tidy up. And you can already see how much this first shape lifted up just by doing these shapes at the bottom. And then we can tidy up and we can continue with the next shape. On the front of my pewter, on my semi-soft surface, I can now draw in the bottom shape. And then we can flatten again, removing our lino. Pewter still on face up on our hard surface, and we flatten towards our design. And then we can tidy up with the Teflon tool. And remember that your pewter is not fixed, so you turn your pewter as you work so that you can work comfortably towards your design. And then we can define. So for the next shape, it is the overall shape at the top here. But before I do that, I want to do these designs that are on top of the bottom part here, and then we will do an overall lift of the entire section. So on the front of my pewter, back onto my liner, I'm going to do these shapes, and I'm going to do them all in one go. One side, and then we can do the other side. And I'm not going to do this edge, I'm just going to do the internal edges. We then remove our pewter from our liner, put it on our hard surface, still keeping it face up, and then we can flatten towards. Now I'm not going to flatten this side at the moment, I'm going to flatten that right at the end. So I'm only going to flatten around the internal and the two bottom edges. And then I can take my Teflon tool and then I can define. And then we can do the other side. So back on the front of my pewter, on my semi-soft surface, we can do the outlines. We can then remove our liner and we can flatten from the front again. And then we can tidy up. And now I'm going to slightly just flatten this side, just to make it easier to draw that line. And I'm going to slightly flatten the other side, but I'm not going to define it because I still want to draw in that edge. So now we can go back onto our liner, and we've got nice little bumps on the design there. And now we can do the overall design to lift up the entire body. So on the front of our pewter on our semi-soft surface, I'm now going to do the overall shape. And be very careful that your hand doesn't slip when you connect to these ones. And I always like doing it a second time if you have a steady hand and you can stay within the first line. And I turn my pewter so that I work towards me, rather than drawing the line away from me, I draw the line towards me. And then the last little bit here. And then we can flatten. So we remove the liner. We flatten from the front on our hard surface. And we're flattening towards our design as close as possible. And remember to turn your pewter instead of turning your hand. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of height from the back on these bigger sections. So we turn our pewter face down, we put it on our soft surface. And I'm going to use my fingers, and I'm just slightly going to add a little bit of height from the back, and I'm concentrating in the center instead of on these ridges. So just a little bit of height. And then I'm going to take the paper stump and I'm going to add a bit of height to these little details here. But it's only a little bit, because this will still raise up from the front as we do the wings. And remember to do this very softly, because you don't want to press too hard with your paper stump. It can form a line. And then we can flatten again from the front. Using our paper stump on the front of our pewter on our hard surface, we tidy up and flatten the edges around. Again, pushing all of that extra height into the design. And then we can again use our Teflon tool to tidy up the edges. I don't want to raise this up too much, because I'm still going to work a lot around this area. Still going to be pushing a lot of height into it. So this is more than enough height for now. So I'm going to just define. And this is a soft motion. I don't want to thin out these edges too much, especially around this area here. There we go. So that's the first section of our butterfly done.